Oh, I know. I wanted to talk about you passing me another mics.
You got it. Absolutely.
And so...
And thank God they're twist-offs.
Oh, I know,
Thank
yeah.
you, Mikes.
I would have had to... I would have had
Use
to
your
put
teeth. Pull a frat boy.
the old rugby molar trick, which sometimes chips and sometimes doesn't. So the teeth.
And at our age.
It ain't good. I'm too old for that.
Ain't good.
So, yeah, but... So, yeah, identity takes many forms, and I think that for me, I so often, time after time, found myself in relationship after relationship, and relationships really served as a model of teaching for me, that, I'm very open about the fact that, I had repressed memories, and how those memories emerged in me was through the trust of someone else. I had to value the process of someone else because I could not trust my own inner process. And when I did trust that person, that they were not deceiving me or lying to me, I had to turn it back in myself and ask, what is deceptive in myself? What is unknown in myself? And when I did that, memories emerged into my consciousness. And that whole process for me was intensely painful and just, intense, but really served to teach me that a few things, that regardless of the enormity of the emotional content that we have to process, which sometimes can be biochemical and not always addressed with medication, but sometimes can be addressed with medication, there's also the emotional, what you're talking about, the experiential process of emotions. And, it's interesting. Jack Kornfield, I think in his book, I think it was A Path with Heart, spoke about how he was like a Zen, or a Buddhist monk, and he had meditated for years and years and years. And he found himself, after all this time of spending time in meditation, having sexual fantasies during meditation. Which is natural and normal, but what he did was he brought awareness to that. And what he found at that would not surprise anyone, but it's a great mystery. And what he found at that was a deep loneliness, which is also deeply, deeply embedded in our human condition and our existential question.
Very much so.
Right, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, what's been arising for me is this sense that many people come into our lives, and that we have to sort of make a decision at some point about how far we let that person into our life, what we share with them,
Sure.
how intimate that relationship becomes, what the boundaries of that relationship are. And I think the real evolution for myself in that process has been to allow myself to stay open to really feeling out the contours of each different relationship that comes in.
I have something that I often say in conversation, which is every relationship has its own integrity, structure, and function.
Yep.
And the other word that has come to me recently is discernment. So discerning what those things are.
Right. Right.
And so let me ask you a question. How do we do that?
Well, for me, again, and this probably won't come as a surprise, it's very experiential.
Yeah.
So, and it unfolds in the moment. And it not only unfolds in the moment, but it also unfolds in the moments when I'm not with a particular person,
Right.
and how that feels and what imprint the person has left on me. But coming from this place of wonder and openness and really feeling into the energy of what boy, this is, difficult territory, I think, because we're not accustomed to doing this particularly. We're much more accustomed to establishing boundaries around the relationship.
Sure,
this is friend.
And based on what? Based
Exactly.
on position?
Based on position, age differences.
Yeah. So that, like, some homeless guy who could have tremendous impact and meaning in your life.
Right. We discard them.
It's discarded because this is a discarding
or a
society.
Child, as we were just talking about.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep. And so I think that, like, as you were saying, this shift with my children and kind of seeing them as, equal energetic beings that have come into the world. Perhaps they've come into the world at a different time than I did. They came in, 3 decades later.
Yeah.
But really that is just a dewdrop, in the time of eternity. And
a flash of lightning.
A flash of lightning,
sky, yeah.
exactly. And to really remain open to both what I have to learn from this person and what this person might be needing from me at this particular time.
Sure.
And I find that that's the difficult part to discern.
Well, for me,
I believe.
Yeah. For you it is, and for me it's clear, actually, Lisa, and I can tell you what it is. It is always, for me, at least theoretically and not always in practice, and I recognize this, but to what may I offer to this person?
Absolutely.
What, first and
Absolutely.
foremost, what may I offer to this person?
Right.
And in that process of giving, and giving fully of oneself in the moment, full attention, full being, full faculties, and just the fullness of my experience of really usually silence and listening, that what they may offer to me is revealed, because there's something in us that wants to reciprocate when something's given, and that's to give back.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool.
And I think just my own process in this has been really trying to feel into the moment.
Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
When I'm with a person, what is it that comes up?
Okay.
At all levels.
Let's break it down into this way.
Mm-hmm.
When you say that, what senses are you using?
All of them. Like, really trying to bring to bear all of the senses.
What are all the senses?
Well, I think that, when I can be in this quiet space, like you're saying, with another person present, what comes up in me? What comes up in my thoughts? I think that's the
mind's
first,
eye?
the mind's eye, right?
What is the mind's eye?
What arises internally, intellectually, cognitively.
In an imagination, right?
In imagination.
Intuitively, what do we
Intuitively, exactly.
What do we feel physically in our body?
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
That was the next thing, I think, is that, and I'm kind of going in order of what I think is the most salient, perhaps, to the aspects that we're less aware of. And it's not because they're not equally as salient. It's because I think, as we were talking about earlier, in our culture, we don't have the training to access them as readily.
No.
In other more primitive cultures, they might be able to acknowledge the...
Quote unquote, yeah.
Quote unquote, exactly. Well, I mean primitive in a positive way.
Sure.
Meaning that...
Less intellectualized.
Less intellectualized, more being present with the moment, and, less of this sort of, Western individual sort of orientation that we've all accustomed to. Exactly. And so when I say, like, use all of my faculties to sort of be present with somebody, I think it's this layering process, exactly in the same way that I did, having this strong reaction to my children leaving a mess in the hallway and feeling this anger rising in me, that it really was this sort of dissecting of each of the emotional, intellectual, physical, intuitive, spiritual, energetic, all of these different levels. I mean... Somatic. I guess a way to think about it is like if you were to run your way up through the chakras. Mm-hmm. At the base core level, at the prime primitive level, what am I feeling?
Right.
And then sort of moving up to, the more spiritual place of, okay, what is sort of happening between us that's not being spoken?
Yeah.
And that maybe isn't even... that we can't even linguistically capture.
Yep.
but just to be present with that as well.
You know, that's what poetry, I think, is for.
Absolutely,
in some sense,
absolutely, of course. Yeah, it's like an attempt to sort of grasp
capture the
that.
silence and the space.
Exactly.
And the language, yeah.
And so I think that for me, in those moments, that it's really a settling into and giving space to each of these different ways of being with another person, and really being present with what's arising for me at all these different levels. And finding that in some situations, you know, that I might have like this very strong emotional draw, and wow, like I feel so safe, for example. And so I take this feeling of safety and then I construct language around it. Oh, I feel safe around this person. But then maybe something else arises, let's say somatically, where I'm like, something.
The head and the heart.
Yeah, exactly. The head and the heart. And maybe where something on a physical level, like something doesn't quite mesh.
It doesn't click.
Or it doesn't click, or, whatever kind of language we want to try and use around that. Or vice versa, where you have maybe like a strong sensual or physical reaction to somebody, and yet there's something emotionally that doesn't quite click, or whatever it is. But I think that for my own journey into this way of being with other people, it's really about exploring what is arising in me, and that it's not about the other person per se. It's really about giving space to the moment of what is arising in me.
So people will say that I can hear people saying, "Well, that's pretty selfish. Or, that's pretty self-absorbed.
Or narcissistic. Right.
But I know because of my own experience that is absolutely not the case. Right?
Yeah, I mean, again, let's go back to what we talked about how people perceive you and how you know yourself to be in the world.
So just to revisit that, before when we were at the studio with Richard, we were talking about identity, and we were talking about what we were talking about. It was what philosopher?
He was talking about Sartre.
And he was talking about the transvestite.
Who was perfectly happy.
Who was perfectly happy dressing.
Yep.
In women's clothes.
Yep.
Looking at himself in the mirror.
Yep.
And then the moment he thought someone was looking in, he was
ruined
devastated.
The experience.
He was devastated, right? So that's sort of what we're examining right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
So I guess kind of jumping off that comment of like, well, maybe that's a very narcissistic position. I don't experience it that way, because what I feel like I'm doing is that, again, like I was saying about what I was trying to model for my children, that by me being fully present in my experience of another person, I am too allowing them to be fully present in their experience.
But let's talk a little bit about what this really is, which is presence, which is awareness. Which is really, what does that allow? It allows responsiveness.
Yes.
Right?
I believe so.
Well, it does.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, that's my experience too.
Yes.
And that's so that the cultivation of awareness is really the cultivation of responsiveness, and from a Buddhist perspective, could be termed like skillful means or right action.
Yes.
To respond, knowing not, because, with the knee-jerk reaction, what is that? It is unexamined life. Responding to a situation which is not understood, which is so much of what we experience and what we are. It's what I am oftentimes,
Right.
And I think that when people argue against meditation, for instance, and say that it's a self-absorbed or selfish act, that you can take your seatbelt off. I think we're about an hour into the conversation now, Lisa. Should we start driving?
We should.
I just think that that the cultivation of awareness through it is what we are. We are responsive. It's just the level to which we are able to respond. So what we want to do is increase that so that there's more compassionate response. There's more understanding in self and other in the relationship. And Joy Harjo and I, on Unraveling Religion, we had a difficult beginning in the conversation, but came to a place of understanding what the show was termed, which is sacredness in relationship. And that this disconnect that we're speaking about, which is in part because of identity and socialization, through spiritual practices, doesn't have to be meditation. It can be many different forms of self-cultivation, introspection, contemplation. Is really, it is about affirming, I just, it's about affirming what we are, which is really, it is a unified reality. And I'll say that I am you and you are me in one sense. That is ultimately very deeply true, but how do we recognize that until we experience that? And then once we experience that and bring that back into the relationship, then I can honor you and you can honor me.
And you and I have certainly shared.
Yeah.
I mean, multiple times in our relationship where we've had that feeling of, deep connection.
One mind.
One mind, one heart, one
You speak what I think,
exactly.
I speak what you think.
And even beyond that.
Absolutely.
I mean, even to that place of just,
beyond silence.
Beyond silence. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been there many times.
The root.
Many times.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so
so I guess
yeah.
kind of what you were just sharing before about that by being in our own awareness, that how is that not narcissistic? How is that ultimately compassionate?
How is it ultimately beneficial?
And beneficial.
Yeah.
And from my experience, again, that when I find that when I'm in that place of being fully present in what's arising in me, that any agenda drops away.
Oh, it's a very important point, Lisa.
That any sense of directing the moment or manipulating, and I don't mean that in a negative way, I just mean literally shaping the moment to have a particular outcome, all of that falls away.
Yeah.
And the only thing that remains is
the pureness of being.
Is the pureness of being.
Yeah.
And bringing in all those senses, the sensual, the community, the like I'm thinking through the chakras, how we communicate, how we see one another through our third eye.
Sure.
I mean, all of these ways of being become purified when we are fully present with our own being. Because
I'm sorry, but we are matter, and we are spirit, and in that body-mind combination of one expression in the moment of body-mind, we have full capacity to, and I really shy away from this notion of extrasensory perception or ESP, paranormal. That's all bullshit. I don't, there are things that we know when we know. And you can call it a lot of different things.
Well, again, it's this idea of trying to linguistically capture something that is...
Or validate
it, or empirically test, or...
Right.
Right.
Oh, it's on this sheet of paper that it says so? Okay.
Exactly.
When you can test things through your own experience, which is what the Buddha recommended,
Well, and now here again, we sort of run up against the question that you and I have discussed in the past too is, then how do we then describe or conceptualize the experience of someone who has a profound mental illness?
Yeah, which I have had.
And how do we come to this place of, well, that's their reality. And it
calls into question, really, what is responsibility and what are we responsible for?
Exactly.
What is the boundary that arises in the moment collectively for that person?
Right.
I mean, that's a very big, broad, existential...
Absolutely.
Question that is full is filled with meaning and purpose, which is probably at this point in time unanswerable. But I think that we're going to get to a clearer understanding of things as the evolution of being predominantly physical and a spiritual being in a physical reality. And I think really the realization that we are really in a spiritual reality that is partly physical will take place. And that question and that the responsibility and what the responsibility for that person with profound, whatever it is, whatever that subjective experience is, which is hindering their inner experience, their contentment, and their relationships.
Or even ability to function in the
Ability
world.
to function in the world. If they're not hurting anyone, then really, what is the point? So just to tie it back home, we are on Delaware and Allen. We are at Allentown Trading Company, and some car just came to a screeching halt. But it's 12:50, and this is going for a little while. I think we can continue for a little while if you're cool with that.
Yeah, of course. Are you kidding me? For us, this is
Yeah, it's early.
This is early. It's not 6 a.m. yet.
Yeah, no. It's not 6 a.m. yet. It's only 10 to 1. We have a few more mics hard to go through.
Oh, so, yeah, we do.
Yeah. And I have to let the audience know that I really am tempted to delve into the Pringles, but I don't think that it'll be appreciated.
They're 40% more cheese-tastic.
Oh, wow. How can I not?
You have to. You
Yeah.
must.
Right.
You must indulge in Pringles.
Delicious.
Cheese-tastic, in fact.
It's cheese-tastic. Oh, my God. So, really important questions, because how do we relate to the marginalized people like myself who are marginalized? You know, I think I've developed the sensitivity to it because I have experienced it in my reality, and I've lost people who I hold most dear because of it. And I think that it's made me very sensitive and aware to the fact that not only do all people have value, but what is my responsibility in restoring other people's ability to connect, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, okay, so let's talk about this idea of connection. What is it that we're ultimately connecting to?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's true. I mean, but our perceptions now is that it's predominantly a physical reality, a physical universe with a spiritual element. That is our perception, but I don't think that that's ultimately what reality manifests as. I think it's one expression. That it is, you can approach it this way, which is kind of a cop-out in one sense that, but I'll go this direction just because I think it's easy to follow, and I don't know how else to describe it, but, you know, the Heart Sutra says form is emptiness, emptiness is form, you know, so that these two interplay are really just the same thing, the same expression. And this is how it manifests in this moment in time, you know, so, but collectively, I often wonder to myself, what is my responsibility in the collective, you know, as a part of the collective. And I think when you begin to form an answer like we've been talking about, that's when the problem arises, you know. It's like Shunryu Suzuki's Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. He talks about, what is a good father? A good father does not know he is a good father. And someone who claims he is a good father is probably not a good father. So that when you have that identity formed in your mind that I am a good father, it sort of prevents you from that responsiveness that I'm talking about, that we have been talking about. That in the moment responsiveness that is a continual unfolding of the human experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I just wanted to turn to at the Infringement Festival tonight. I had the honor of reading a eulogy, a poem that I wrote for my step grandfather, Hiram Augustus Miller, and I read it, and I read Through the Day, and I read One True Season. And I read this, an open letter to Hiram Augustus Miller, and I think I wanted to shift because you're a poet and I'm a poet. That I thought we'd approach this from a poetic lens.
Mm-hmm.
So really, what are we expressing when we write poetry?
I think that answer will be different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I find that it ironically gets me out of my head and gets me much more into a feeling space.
Yeah. Why is that important?
Well, for me particularly,
yeah.
Oh, come on, you know the answer to that question.
Well, go ahead. They don't.
I think it would be an understatement to say that I tend to be very cerebral.
What? People fell asleep in this conversation 5 minutes in.
Exactly. Right. Boring. And I find that for me, when I really, first of all, I don't write poetry in any sort of disciplined way. That poetry asks me to write it.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
And I think that that's a very different way for me to be in the world, because usually
Why?
so.
Why?
Why what?
Why is that? Why does it ask you to write it?
Well, I think it's something that usually it arises because some experiences happened, some interaction with another person, or...
Is it stuff that can't be really processed intellectually or expressed intellectually?
I think it can be expressed intellectually. I mean...
But people fall asleep 5 minutes into the conversation.
Right, exactly. And, I wrote a poem about us, even.
Yeah.
Remember, I shared that with you, and I could share it now.
Do you have it memorized?
No, but I have it in my
Your phone?
trusty iPhone.
Ooh. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And I think that it comes from a more feeling place. And because I think there aren't rules necessarily around it, that it allows for the openness.
Yeah.
In the same way that, as I said about sort of feeling into another person, writing poetry is really feeling into an experience.
Yeah.
But using linguistic constructs to try to... what's the word I want?
Convey or express.
Convey, express. It feels even deeper than that. Like,
communicate.
Commune. I think that that's an even better, maybe, way of expressing it. And also, I find that that poetry, at least for me, is a way to sort of say what maybe falls outside of polite conversation.
Sure.
Or
it's one of the reasons why I love poetry, is because it breaks down the barriers that societally are in the social contract.
Exactly. You can talk about even an experience that you have with somebody that you may or may not even share with them. Particularly. That something arose in you and it was so powerful, and there was something either I think there's something basic about it, about its it usually goes to something very, like you said, ineffable, but very emotional. I think, I don't know, I feel like I'm sort of struggling for the words.
No, that it captures, I think it captures, it lassos or captures something that is a part of the ineffable experience, the deeper, not even emotional, but beyond emotional, the experience of that we are consciousness, and the experience of that consciousness and what that is, and how it expresses itself through the formation of this physicality, the body, and the psyche and psychology of human beings, So that I really think that it's one of the reasons why I truly love poetry, because I notice that poetry's great in and of itself, but I'm much more interested in how poetry builds community, which is what my mentor, my creative writing teacher, Mage Reagan, taught me. Mage is for those of you who don't know, he was my first guest on Unraveling Religion, as I went from crawling to walking as a radio host, and but Mage was beautiful. And for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to listen, Mage had many, in a very beautifully articulate, experiential way, conveyed things about the nature of our daily experience that, in a way that was unique to Mage, that he taught me to find my own voice in my own way. And so, did you find it on your phone, Lisa?
I did, in fact.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is a poem that I wrote in, I don't know, when did I write this? Let's see. I don't have a year on it. But I wrote it to capture, I think, the quality of many conversations that I've had with a multitude of people. And that reach to the center and to the edges at the same time. So I think I'll just go ahead and share it without more. We smoke in rings around our truths, slipping words through the unseen circumference of love, from one to the other, no beginning, no end, creating instead in dashed diameters, from the center of infinity to the edges of the abyss. So we stave off the cold by the heat of our words, encircling, reaching for the center.
That's nice.
Thanks.
That's a fucking good poem.
Thanks, man.
Sure, absolutely. Do you have any more on there?
Yeah. Got tons.
Go ahead, yeah. Let's see what else you have. What else comes to mind?
Let's see. This is another poem I think that often reflects the connections that we make through communication and the ways that people save us through that reaching out and connecting with us.
Yeah.
Your words that night. Your words that night, while I sat on my porch swirling in my own smoke, birthing ghosts in the cool, dark emptiness, were the midwife to my winter. Your words sliding into my ear, slipping into my heart, holding me up before myself as the past and what may come. Your words that night fell into me as brilliant leaves descending from the weight of too much beauty, laying bare the frailty of dry branches, no longer able to hold such gloriousness. Your words that night melted me from the weight of too much coldness and packed expectations, frozen in another time, after the snowmen. Your words that night, my words that night, danced on the fallen leaves and made a carpet of crushed gold to properly welcome this winter.
Ah, that's beautiful, Lisa. That that rings in such an authentic way, such a genuine way.
Well, you and I have been to that place.
Yeah.
Many
We
times.
have been.
Many times.
That is an amazing, amazing poem.
Thank you.
Yeah, holy shit.
And this coming from the nominated best poet in Buffalo, I
Shut
take that
the
as
fuck up.
quite a compliment. I take that as quite a compliment.
I had the ballot box stuffed.
Oh, come now.
So I have one that ties into, because I broke out my collection of stuff, and it's actually a poem that ties into attachment and identity formation. Not identity formation, but the experience of distancing ourselves from the experience of that connection in youth, of childhood or infancy. And it's very short. It's a super short poem, and I've read it before. And sometimes it is served for great meaning with me. And it's called Childhood Remembered. It goes like this: Childhood remembered. Autumn stream leaf, still searching for her lost branch. And in that, that's the whole poem. So that's the end. But that autumn stream leaf still searching for her lost branch is each one of us, I think. You know what I mean? Longing for what? Not really childhood, but that connection of the experience of that unified, the unity with all things that we had in infancy, that we lost through our socialization and identity constructs.
Well, I think the thing that arises for me in that is that, it's the leaf that's searching for the branch, but the leaf emerged from the branch,
right,
and therefore has the branch within it.
Yeah.
And that it needs to sort of, and again, sort of winding back to what we were talking about, attachment again, that, one could look at this simply as, the leaf is the child leaving the mother is the branch. But I think that it reminds me actually of, I think I've told you this about my daughter when she was 6 or 7. We were watching this show, remember? I told you about this?
I do, yeah.
We were watching this show where these people had stumbled upon this body of water that could give them eternal life. And they drank it accidentally, but then obviously realized that they weren't aging. And the young boy who was 16, 17, met a human and a mortal, put it that way, a mortal, and fell in love with her. And he offered her to drink from this water. And that if she drank from the water, she too would have immortality, and that they would be able to be together forever. And I remember asking my daughter, because we were watching it together, well, what would you do? And my daughter said, looked at me in, sheer stupidity of, well, this is a no-brainer. I'm like, okay, well, what would you do? This is quite an existential question. How does a 6 or 7-year-old answer this existential question? Well, of course I wouldn't drink the water. Well, why wouldn't you drink the water? Because I have to die. Because in order for new life to come, I have to let go.
And for our lives to have meaning, right?
And for my life to have meaning, I have to let go of this reality.
Yeah.
And wow, was that a really powerful, and how certain she was of it. That's the part I think that was even more stunning.
Sure.
And I think
it's another example of Asha's teacher.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And the sense of, when I was listening to your poem, that of course the leaf has to let go of the branch. And the searching is not for the branch without, the branch that was left behind.
Sure. It
is the branch that is now within the leaf.
Well, that's an enlightened leaf.
It's a pretty enlightened leaf. That's right. That's right. Exactly.
Oh my God.
I don't know if that's what you're intent was or
It
thought
wasn't.
was
No,
behind
no.
the poem.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
But that's what sort of emerged for me is that, the branch is ultimately in the leaf and it's whole. It's not, there's nothing lost in the wholeness of the leaf because it had to leave the branch.
Yeah.
It had to let go to make way
Right.
for something new. And it too will find its way back into the ground or whatever it is, wherever
as a part of all things.
As a part of all things. And it's not that it stumbles upon that, it's that it always is that.
Right.
And it has to come to its own sense of, this is who I am.
Right.
I already am this wholeness.
Right. Oh, I like that. Yeah, that's
So-
great. Yeah, that's beautiful. Do you have another one?
I got lots.
Sure, let's go.
Let's go.
You might want to put your seatbelt back on.
No, you might want to put your seatbelt on.
True.
True. All right. Well, I'm going to share my a poem that I have shared with you many times. You and I have sat with this poem many times. And this is probably, I wouldn't call it, I wouldn't rank it in any way in terms of like, oh, it's the best poem I've ever written, or, but it's the most powerful for me.
Sure.
And the reason why, interestingly, the reason why I think it has the most power for me is because I really have no idea what it means. So in the truest sense of the word, it really came through me.
Yep.
And I've sat with it for many, many, many years. I wrote this in the late 80s.
Yep.
And it is a poem that continues to just revisit me and call to me.
Okay.
And so we'll put it out there and see what.
Let's see.
And see what happens.
See if anything arises.
Yeah, let's see. Okay. I have walked lifetimes across sand and marble in a darkness deeper than antigenesis. I have walked with my mothers, daughters, and lovers toward iridescence, a simple glow from far away, far ahead, and we walked in sandals, guided only by hope and imagination to light the journey. I buried dark little ones along the way. Lovers were carried out to sea. One mother remained, holding fast my small hand, saying rosaries, bellowing chants. We ascended a great mountain. Bloodied, my baptism began. I paused, a dark man enters. My mother smiles as she looks on. We come with sudden joy as we watch the sun ascend beyond the distant trees. Together, we create paper dolls from dried lotus petals. A bird shadows the fiery orb. I look up to marvel at its splendor. The gust from its mighty wing flapping sweeps my fragile angels from the palm of my hand. I cry in anguish, screaming, lunging to the ground alone, grasping palms of dirt and lilies. This power comes through me, and I push my insides out, screaming, not my own. This bird above ignites as a wing enters the sun too close. Amongst the dirt and lilies and lotus dust, there lay my daughter, dark and lovely. I say goodbye to her and walk on, alone. My tears fall a great distance, and a waterfall is thus born. I sit myself upon the cliff's edge, and a fish emerges from my belly. Branded upon its gills, I am. I place a feather between my legs, consume the fish, take the leap of faith, and forever I am the dragon.
Oh. I know that one.
You know that one.
I do.
Mm-hmm.
So, do we want to enter into past and future lives?
Let's do it.
You want to?
Yeah.
All right. What do you got to say about that?
Oh boy. Yeah, something about that has a past life quality to it, doesn't
absolutely.
it? I know.
Yeah,
I know.
I think so.
Oh yeah, definitely. Absolutely. So what quality of that smacks of past life to you?
I don't know. Am I way
Me
off?
too. No.
Maybe I'm drunk on mics.
No,
Speaking
man.
of which, could I have another one?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah.
For everyone listening, okay. Just want to make that clear. So what about past lives?
You know, that's a poem that, like I said, continues to revisit, call me, and I think that's why it's so hard for me to discern it, because it feels like it's of me, but it's not of my memory.
Yeah.
It's not of my...
I'm right with you.
You know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly.
Okay, yeah.
So what are you talking about? Can you articulate it?
Can
Because I know what you're talking
articulate-
about, but they may not.
I know. I wrote that poem, I said in the late 80s, but actually I wrote it in 95, which
Okay.
even has more significance, which I know
Sure.
you know what that means.
Yeah.
In 1995,
Yeah.
I experienced my own mental breakdown.
Sure.
And first hospitalization. And that poem was written after
Yeah.
that experience.
Yeah.
And I think because of having the boundaries so blown out of the water,
Sure.
through,
Identity ripped out.
Oh yeah, I mean ripped to shreds.
Yeah. What is left?
What was left exactly, and what was left were these
Something's
profound
left. Yeah. Yeah.
realities, and a sense of like I didn't have to hold it together anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Isn't that glorious?
Oh yeah. Woo.
What a relief.
What a relief. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And I think that it invited something in of me not holding things together, invited things in that maybe I wouldn't have allowed in previous to that experience.
Yeah.
And so that's a real powerful poem for me, because I think it speaks to
The expanse of time.
the expanse of time, and I think also too that, you know, as I reread it now and you know, being present with what's arising in this current reading, because it's dovetailing with this idea of being unmoored.
Yeah.
And this idea of you know, being born and then I'm alone.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I am both the mother and the child
Yeah.
in this poem.
Yeah.
Simultaneously. And that I give birth and I abandon the child and go on alone.
So that self-contained is a metaphor for our adulteration.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yet, and my mother is with me at the beginning.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way, as I'm giving birth to my own child, she's no longer there.
Right.
And so I think that there is something about this idea of this existential aloneness.
Sure.
You know, and this, you know, we give birth and, you know, we are, in the giving birth too, we are ultimately alone.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then the child to whom we give birth is, again, ultimately alone as well.
It reminds me, what comes to mind is Iku? I don't know how to pronounce it, but he wrote a poem called it's a little poem, and it just, I don't know what it's called, but it goes like this. It's we were born into this world alone, we die alone. This is also an illusion. I will show you the way, not to come, not to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Beautiful.
speaking about that, yeah, I have a poem. Let me in this.
You have a poem?
I have a poem.
Really?
I do.
How
yeah.
shocking.
I know.
It's so good that you're willing to step outside of your comfort zone once in a while. Speaking of stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
You know,
What?
you owe me big for this.
Oh, we're dancing.
We are dancing.
Can I tell you my master plan?
What's your master plan?
Is to have this conversation go beyond the bars closing.
Oh, yes. But in the future...
That's fine. Well, in the future, many things could happen.
Cheers to that.
So, in talking about the expanse of time, from the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about the transmigration of the ocean through of the soul through the ocean of birth and death. This inspired this poem, which is, I think it speaks for itself, and it doesn't kind of articulate in the way that yours does, but it indirectly infers that
So what you're saying is that I should be the #1 poet in Buffalo?
Sure, go ahead.
Take you on. A little poet off.
Poet slam.
A little poet slam.
That's what we're doing right now.
Oh yeah.
But this is called The Watchman, Sorrow's Fountain. Wellspring, rain light, passing days, moon around, earth and seasons. Life's texture is autumnal constant. Where do the leaves come and go? Stars and grass are the great way. Knowing and not known, mark these days, motionless, as I watch the sun dissolve in time. And so I think that this is talking about incarnation after incarnation after incarnation, my relationship with this earth and this sun and this moon. Yeah. So that's
And it's also reminding me of one of the first really powerful poems that I wrote too, that was very sort of came at the beginning of this. I think it was like in 92, 91, 92. And I had a very I think that was sort of the beginning of my own sort of spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
Away from a religious sense.
Yeah, of course.
And much more into a deep spiritual sense. And arriving at this place of what does it mean to connect with another person? What does that feel like? What is that experience? And I think that it does connect to this idea of like as you were talking about those forces that draw us together. You and I have often talked about that, you know?
Some call it karma. What is your karma?
Some call it karma,
connection?
Reincarnation, past life, whatever you want to say. And, I'm a little more skeptical about, labeling it in that way.
Well, I don't worry about labeling it.
Exactly.
But, because you can label it all you want, but there's an undoubted connection.
There's an undoubted connection
between people that is inexplicable.
Exactly.
Oftentimes.
Exactly.
Not even oftentimes, but on rare occasions it is inexplicable.
Exactly. And I think that this poem, let me see if I have the year on it. I think it was in 91 or something. 92. I think for the first time in my life had a connection with another person that was so profound and ineffable that really poetry was the only way that I could even approach it.
Let's go to this place.
Let's go to this place, man.
Okay, let's talk about this.
Okay, so this poem was a way to sort of try to express that ineffable connection and my place in that connection and my place beyond that connection, or the connection beyond my place, if that's a better way to say it.
You're drunk.
I'm drunk, man. Here we go. Let's do it. All right. Wise ferryman, spiritual other, I long for your wisdom to enter me, yet I know the truth of the timeless river, and its cold voice chills me. Even as I hear it, I am deaf. In my search for selflessness, I have not even begun, for I know not the self of which I wish to abandon, nor the other I wish to embrace. Self in the river, other in the river, Self lost in the other, in the river. Self found in the other, the river. Wise ferryman, approach me in your wisdom and teach me to float atop the undulating, lonely moments of time into the suspension of my destiny, where I shall find self in my oneness with you and lose self in oneness with God. The river lures me as it whispers its gospel. I was always the same, and yet every moment I am new. I approach the threshold sandy where you rule in calm. Barefoot, I seek you out. You call me wise woman? I am wise in that I seek? No. You are wise in that you live. Your wisdom beckons me. Nothing was, nothing will be. Everything has reality and presence. You call me select. If I am, then carry me to the depths of the river and drown me. Then I shall be wise. Then I shall know love. Then I shall know the truth of the river as I dissolve into other, real, present, and free.